Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to the Thiiird magazine website and representation. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying the EDUCAS A-Level Media Studies specification, as it currently appears as one of the optional set text on Component 2. The magazine has a real air of representing people or groups that are typically underrepresented or misrepresented in other media products. So, for example, if you think of any minority group or a group that is traditionally marginalised, whether that be women, LGBTQ plus communities, ethnic minorities, etc., this magazine's website tries to represent them and represent them in a realistic way, in a positive way, just in a way that is more inclusive than a lot of other media content elsewhere. In terms of ethnicity, you can see that there's lots of representation of a diverse range of people in terms of ethnic groups. You know, people from different cultures, different religions, different countries, different skin colours, and that makes it feel very inclusive and diverse to audiences. And the representations aren't necessarily the same as you would find elsewhere. Often ethnic minorities are represented in quite negative ways elsewhere in the media, whereas the representations on this website are quite powerful, quite positive, and quite successful. But they're also not afraid to represent the negative issues that these groups often have to tackle. So, for example, there are articles about racism, and so they are not creating a totally utopian view of what it's like for people in these communities. They're creating a very positive representation, yes, but they're also tackling the kind of grittier, realistic side of what life is like for certain people within these groups. Whereas a lot of media products, mainstream media products, represent ethnic minorities in quite a colonial way, still representing them as being marginalised, as being lesser, as being other. This magazine's website is representing them in more of a kind of decolonialised way. If you look up Gilroy's theory, there's lots of articles as well about things like intersectional feminism, which is a great way of kind of embracing Bell Hooks's ideas about how there are issues about feminism, there is sexism, there is misogyny, but it is very closely tied to things like race and ethnicity and class. And so the magazine's website pages, tackle some quite difficult issues, but they are tackling them, whereas a lot of other magazines kind of tend to ignore these issues completely. The people that make the magazine, the actual staff that work there, are very diverse themselves in terms of gender, ethnicity and sexuality, and perhaps this has an impact and an influence on the representations that they are creating in their articles, being more diverse themselves. Again, in terms of gender, there's a huge representation of different gender identities, whether that is cis, trans, or a range of other gender identities. Women, for example, are represented in fairly positive, powerful, successful ways, when in other mainstream media products, they perhaps aren't represented in this way. Men are represented slightly less, and I think that's to do with the fact that they are a majority group, and this magazine does tend to focus on more marginalised communities, but there is representation there, and it's important to note that the representation of women and men are not binary, so we're not getting gender binary representations here. We're seeing a whole spectrum in terms of gender. When I was on the website, I saw articles about men embracing their femininity, wearing makeup, wearing dresses, etc. And so you're getting representations of gender that are perhaps more diverse and more modern. Lots of articles about the LGBTQ plus communities and people that fall into those groups. Lots of articles about what it's like to live with homophobia, to live with transphobia, what it's like to deal with issues that the queer community often encounter. But also lots of really positive, powerful statements about embracing your identity, coming out stories, the use of rainbow colours and pride flags to show inclusiveness and acceptance. So it's really clear from the magazine's pages that they are trying to make this magazine feel inclusive and accepting, and a community that people can feel that they belong to. Actually, on the magazine's About page, they say that they want to amplify the voices of the underrepresented. So it's part of their branding, part of their manifesto. They actually also state that they have 3 values on their website. The first one is representation, the second is inclusivity, and the third is critical celebration. So you can see those values exemplified in the representations online. There is some representation of realism, despite the fact that a lot of the images are very stylized and, high fashion and almost surreal. There are some images and articles that feel much more grounded in reality, whether that's black and white photos, unstaged, naturalistic settings. So there are some representations that are very much more grounded in reality, and perhaps that's just to make these articles feel more real for readers. So that was my easy to understand guide to the representations on the Thiiird magazine website. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for other videos that are going to be relevant for you, including about Thiiird magazine. And if you would like a video that I don't already have, leave a little comment below and I'll add it to my to-do list.